Hey Tea-Sipper, I'm Alaina Viau, and this is our first ever episode of Spill the Tea with Loose Tea Music Theatre. Today I'm chatting with the incredible multidisciplinary artist Olivia Shortt. They are a musician, composer, librettist, sound designer, and everything that sparkles and glitters. Olivia, why don't you tell me a little bit about you and your journey to opera?
I started off as a classical saxophonist. I've always loved singing, but for a long time was not very good at it. I was more of an admirer of singers. I feel like the colors and textures you can get with the voice are so beautiful and so interesting, and they can express so much. I've always had a relationship in wanting to kind of duplicate that with saxophone. My whole life I've had a relationship with singers, whether it's been like just admiring their work or being a part of projects. I was in musical theater for a long time in high school, whether I was like in the ensemble or playing in the pit band. Opera became more of a, like in the last few years kind of thing. I just met a lot of wonderful people who were making really cool art, seeing the possibilities of what they're doing and what opera could be really kind of energized my interest in opera in general. And then to be writing an opera now, it was just like a really great way to integrate all my interests and loves in creation and the creation of new work in a space where I knew a lot of people were interested and engaged and wanting to, hear stories from Indigenous creators. Kind of like a little short story of how I got to here.
And what are you excited by in opera?
Right now in opera, I'm really excited by artists like Marian Newman and the work that they're creating and discussing what collaboration can look like in opera and changing what it can look like. That excites me so much. And seeing people like Ian Cuson working with the Canadian Opera Company, so many brilliant singers who are also engaging within the opera world in different ways. Diantha is writing opera. Rebecca has been doing work with the National Theatre School in Montreal. It's just so exciting and inspiring to see what other people are doing.
What sounds in opera are you kind of looking towards yourself, or what are you interested in?
Yeah, I am very much rooted in the world of saxophone. I do love experimental music and sort of the range of colors that you get with multiphonics and the harshness and the way the saxophone and any woodwind or brass instrument can break in sound. Those are the sounds that feel very human to me. A lot of the sound worlds I live in are from that, is from wanting to be human, but also wanting to take all these instruments and tools that we have and finding ways to play with the darkness of them and the lightness and also the extremity of sound, not just this beautiful pure sound, but also thinking about what is the rainbow, I guess, or the palette that we can work with, and just wanting to be weird, raw, weird, and kind of
Crunchy?
Crunchy! I was grungy, crunchy. Yeah.
So tell me about your new opera that we're collaborating on and its journey to eventually become...
When I was originally creating it, I didn't have an end goal in mind. I was creating the text, and I was just writing about lost and found items, and it got me thinking about, missing and murdered Indigenous women and the way society treats people versus objects. And at first it was just going to be some weird text, and I didn't have a plan for it quite yet. And then I got some opportunities to create into something else, like a micro opera, I guess, at the time. I have known Du Yun, and she recommended me as someone to write a short vocal work for an online gala that Long Beach Opera was doing. I created this sort of short version, I guess, of what will become the longer opera. And I saw that Loose Tea had this call for their librettist composer program. And I submitted it because I was you know what? I think this could be something more. And so when I applied, I got an email back nicely rejecting me, but not because it was actually a rejection. It was because Loose Tea wanted to commission me, and it was nice to see that someone else recognizing yeah, this could be something bigger. And that was really exciting. I've never created an opera before. I've never created a work this big before. This is my first big Toronto commission. And so it's just all these exciting things, and also just all my own philosophies I get to bring into this and make it a part of the process for this work. And just the idea of changing what can opera look like? What are the structures in opera, both systemically and even just artistically within the piece? This idea of lost and found items in a museum and wanting to talk about something that's really important to me and to my community. And then also just wanting to engage a lot of people in the process.
And any other thoughts on opera or the industry itself?
With opera, I think some of the stuff that has kind of held me back from necessarily wanting to be in that world is the gatekeeping that happens with a lot of larger arts organizations. And I'm currently sitting with a group called the Circle of Artists with the Canadian Opera Company, so I'm kind of getting firsthand to see what it's like being on the inside of one of these organizations. But what I love so much about being involved with a smaller organization, you always hear grassroots, but you have so much more flexibility. There's so much more that you can do with smaller and medium-sized organizations that you just don't see happening. A lot of the really wonderful, beautiful projects that have made me excited about opera have been from smaller indie companies.
And what tips would you give people starting out or pursuing their art?
So for someone who's just starting out, one, keep practicing your own art making. Whatever kind of art you do, just make it and do it. I talk a lot about TikTok lately because there's so many people sharing their stories from whatever community they're with, whether it's like people talking about having ADHD or people talking about working in opera or people who just are like blogging their daily lives. Like there's so much information available, and with algorithms you can find the people you're looking for. And so I highly recommend like figuring out who you admire and whose work you like and who inspires you. I think that's helped me a lot is being surrounded by people who are really not just positive, but also like very supportive, care a lot about the people they work with, care about the process, care about how art is being made, what the message is that art is putting out and their art is putting out to the world. Find those people and have coffee with them. I do a lot of that. I still do. I did it a lot when in my early 20s, and I would just message people and say like, hey, I think you're really cool. Maybe I saw a show that they did work for or created, and I'd just be like, can I hang out with you? Can I buy you coffee or a snack or something? And just kind of pick your brain and ask you about who you are. And a lot of people are very receptive to that. You'd be surprised by how many people will say yes if they have the time to just hang out for a coffee. Just go see shows and go see what other people are making and push yourself. I feel like a lot of it is just meeting people and getting to know what is around you and making sure that you're well informed. Applying to lots of programs. Part of it, was just wanting to get my name out there and wanting to have people see my stuff and learning that rejection is not always a negative thing. Like if I actually documented how many things I apply to, programs, calls for proposals, I probably don't get half of them, and that's fine. Sometimes I have actually generated ideas by applying to proposals. It's just helped me to think, do I have any new ideas right now that I'd really like to explore? How can I explain that to other people? And that's what these kinds of applications make you do. They make you think about your art, the intent behind the art, who's it for, what the purpose of doing it right now is. Get your name out there, have people think about you. When people see your name come up time and time again, you'll start getting calls for work. You'll start, having meetings with people because they want to get to know you better because they've seen, maybe you haven't been successful, but they've seen your name and your stuff come up enough times now that they really want to find a way to work with you. Sometimes rejection turns into the greatest things and the greatest opportunities.
And apply to everything.
Apply to everything. That is great advice.
Thanks so much for joining me on our first episode of Spill the Tea with Loose Tea Music Theatre. I'm Alaina Viau, and remember to like and subscribe and share on all of the social media platforms for that lovely algorithm karma goodness.